Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We are so pleased to welcome Pastor Walter Moss from SERVE. That is the Community Initiative to Reduce Violence. Good morning.
Good morning.
You've got all kinds of cool things with you. First, I notice a coloring book. What is that?
Well, that is one of our coloring books from our office dealing with how to deal with bullying for kids. Mm-hmm. And it's called the No Bullying Zone.
The No Bullying Zone. Where do people get this?
Well, you know what? We have them at our office, and we'd be glad to give them out. And I can leave my phone number. People can always call me at 330-309-2900, 330-309-2900, Pastor Walt Moss. They can call me or text me, and we'll get those to them. And also, if they have we have a speaker, Jim Knight, that also goes out and speaks about the bullying.
Let's talk about bullying. Let's park there for a little bit. Recently, we've had just a rash of horrible tragedies of young people taking their lives, and they haven't exactly pinpointed bullying to be the cause of it, but they haven't ruled it out in some of the cases. Right. First of all, just from your perspective, Pastor Walt, how does bullying become so bad that a young person sees no other way out than to take their life?
Right. Well, I believe it becomes so bad because that person feels like they don't have anybody to talk to, and they feel isolated. And I believe a lot of it has to do with that individual's personality. And it's like a double sword. Mm-hmm. They don't want to go and tell. They don't like doing that. Their personality's against that.
Right.
And because sometimes, people can be different than other
We're all
people.
Different. Each of us is different.
Well, let's just say children.
Yes.
And sometimes because the person is a loner, mm-hmm. and maybe doesn't do what everybody else does. I had to deal with that when I was in school. And even in college, mm-hmm. when you didn't do what everybody else does, you can become, he's the oddball person. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that happens. And for some reason, a lot of these kids, they don't want to tell. They hold it in, and they hold their pain and the hurt in, and they just don't go and tell or ask for help.
Yeah. Is that part of the personality style? The same kind of person who may be victimized because they're a loner would also have that same kind of personality, that I don't want to talk to somebody. So that seems like you're getting a double whammy there.
Right.
The very thing that you're being bullied about
Correct.
keeps you from getting help.
Correct.
How do we fix that?
Well, I think, again, parents, classmates, friends, and family, churches, I think we got to really talk to our kids and up front and let all of our kids know that you don't have to tolerate that, and that there's people who you can talk to, and there's people who you can go to help you. And I think that's really what that child is wanting, is some mm-hmm. help. And how do I handle that? They may not have the skills, the people skills to tell that person to back down or leave me alone.
Right.
And they just keep taking it until inside of them just, and it comes out not just the suicide, but it comes out in so many, the cutting. Mm-hmm. I learned when I started learning about suicide and suicide prevention here in Stark County, I didn't realize that even before we talk about suicide, let's talk about all the kids that are here cutting themselves. Right. And there are a lot of kids who do that. They don't end up dying, but, man, they got all kind of cuts on their arms and even their legs.
It's hard to understand what makes a person hit that point, where the person you want to lash out at and hurt would be the person making you feel so bad.
Right.
Why does that become then internalized, where they start to make themselves doubly bad by hurting themselves?
Man, that I think we should write a book on that because, man, that's what we asked.
Right.
But we still, all these years dealing with this, we still haven't quite come up with an answer on how we can really help our kids. And, I'm just thankful and grateful that I had cousins and friends around me who I felt like if anything happened, I could talk to them.
Yes. letting children know that they need to tell somebody
Yes,
if
yes.
somebody is hurting them in any way. Back in the day, Pastor Wald, it used to seem like a rite of passage would be that a dad would take his kid particularly a son,
Yes.
under his wing and say, now if anybody gives you a problem, I'm going to teach you how to punch. Now I'm going to teach you to use it only when it's right, only in self-defense, but you are going to learn to defend yourself. Does that not take place anymore?
Well, I mean, I think there's some of that, but you don't hear a lot of it anymore. And a lot of it has to do with the broken relationships in the family, and even between fathers and their children. And so it's like all these things catch up with us when we as adults don't do it right. And our children begin to suffer.
Oh, aren't they always the ones?
Yeah.
They're always the ones. The community initiative to reduce violence. Here's another angle of it, though. What if you detect that your child is a bully? What do you do?
Well, I think that child needs to be talking to. First at home, you know?
Yeah.
I think we depend too much on the school, thinking that the school, no, it all starts at home. And there again is a lot of our problems. Some problems, there's a one-parent home, single-parent home, and sometimes that mother is working 2 to 3 jobs and not really even with those kids. And so, again, there's just that another issue that she don't even know what that child is doing. And
yes, there's certain things we can't undo. We can't undo the fact that that's a single-parent home. We can't undo the fact that she has 3 jobs. It seems like it's pretty tough. And then just hoping for the best, that the kids are hanging out with the right people, and you just hope that they're somehow getting a moral compass somehow in there.
And that's why I pray and wish that more of our kids would go to church.
Yes,
I grew up in the church, and today I see a lot of kids in junior high, middle school, high school that don't even go to church, and so they don't have that spiritual piece to help them in their time of need.
And that's what you need the most, isn't it? When you're confronting these violence situations and depression.
Right. That's it.
It seems, where do you run to? You run to the rock.
Right. And see, you hit a key word, depression, and that's what happens. Some of these kids get into depression, and then they begin to think, man, this isn't worth it, you know? And that's when really by the time it hits them, or they get into that phase, that's when they really need help.
Earlier this week, we talked to some folks from Emerge Counseling, and I asked them this question I'm going to ask you as well. Once someone commits suicide, does then it seem suddenly that's on the table? And when you see 5, now 6 students from one school system taking their own life, does that make it seem okay for others to follow suit, where maybe in the past they wouldn't have considered it? Now they look at this as a way out. Well,
I think it's all a wake-up call to our community. I really believe when there's one suicide, it's one too many, and I think it's speaking to the whole village that, hey, we got some problems. We got some kids. Our children need us.
Yes.
And, because of my position, I work with the county coroner. 2 years ago, a young 15-year-old hung himself, and the coroner was so shaken that he asked me to take him to the wake because he wanted to pay respect to the mother of that child.
Yes.
And I took him. But before I went, I have to say this, that he showed me the picture of what the little boy looked like after he hung himself. And that is just so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, and I'll say this also with that case, he really, I believe, thought he could, he had a knife on him. And I think he thought he could cut the rope in time, but because you can see where it was cut. But when you jump, your body weight is faster than your hand.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened.
So
and that
even
was,
at the end, as he was
Right.
trying to undo what he had
right,
done.
right.
Oh, my gosh, that's so
Yes,
tragic.
yes.
What do we do as a community for the people left behind, those
Wow.
grieving mothers? What can
Yeah.
we do?
Well, I think one of the words that you and I have been saying here is they need our support
Yeah.
and our love. And so anything that I can do, that's why I try to go to the suicide prevention meetings and to keep up. And so just to be a support, in our community.
Mm-hmm.
They need our support.
Something that kids have to deal with these days that we didn't back in the day, and that's the internet and social media. How does that, like anything, something can be used for good and something can be used for evil. And it seems like bullies have really figured out how to use social media in a very, very evil way. How do we combat that?
Well, again, it come back to the home, to who's in charge, who has responsibility of what that child is doing, watching. And, man, there is so many avenues now. And I even personally, I use Facebook at my job. But these kids are using Snapchat and all these other vehicles, and that's how these bullies are able to get to them. And that is, so I guess parents, guardians, you got to watch and see what these kids are into. Yeah. And somebody's got to help police them.
And they, young people wanting to assert their independence are going to say, what are you talking about? You want to see my social media, but you're saying that it's essential.
Yes, because somebody has to be responsible for that child. And see what happens if something happens to that child, then what happened? The parents feel guilty because they didn't have any type of discipline or watching what that child was really getting into.
Yeah. There have been instances of school violence where there were some telltale signs on a person's social media account, but, either wasn't taken seriously or for one reason or the other, nothing was said. What do you do if you notice someone is posting some very disturbing images or messages?
Right. Well, what is good, since that is public information, you could always notify the police department. The police are on the internet and Facebook, and they watch stuff like that. And sometimes that's how they end up getting a person convicted, because that person had posted that information. So, yes, it's just like the people who I deal with who seen a crime. It's the same thing. You got to report what you see.
Even though no crime's been committed.
Right.
If there's a reason to be concerned, it's better to err on the side of caution.
That's right.
All right. Let's get back to bullying a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this book that you came up with. What age group is that geared towards, and what are the messages you've got in there?
It was, let's just say, small children, grade school kids.
Is that when we should get them? Get them early?
Got to get them early, yes. Now, because even these little kids, I mean, they know all the iPhones and they know all this stuff. So this really helps give them a tool. And you know what? Also, it helps them talk, and it helps the teacher talk to them about it. It can help the family have a little discussion about it. They can color, and they can remember some of the little things in here that they see. And that, just like it helps them to begin to understand that they're not to be bullied or let anybody push them in those types of things.
Where's the line between just teasing somebody or kind of goofing around with them and actual all-out bullying? Where do we draw that line?
Well, I think it comes even back to us, to the adults and that child, and knowing how much that child can take and within themselves. And they would say, I don't like that. Please don't do that. And I think it comes back to kids even respecting each other.
Respecting, that's the key word, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. We are with Pastor Walt Moss. He is with SERVE, the Community Initiative to Reduce Violence, and we'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.